Big fundraising numbers coming out for the second quarter of campaign 2020. President Trump leads the way with $54 million, but the Democratic candidates also reporting some eye-popping totals. KPIX 5's political reporter Melissa Caen is following the money.
I am enormously proud and humbled to receive so much support from the working class of this country.
Senator Bernie Sanders just announced that he raised $18 million in the second quarter of 2019. That's the same amount he raised in the first quarter. Joe Biden has raised $21.5 million since he jumped into the race at the end of April. Mayor Pete Buttigieg raised nearly $25 million in the second quarter of this year. That's far more than the $7 million he raised in the first quarter. And he may have announced his fundraising numbers now because he's still polling in the single digits.
There's a reason why we're hearing about his numbers, very quickly, right? They're good, and I think, he did not quite get the bounce in support or from out of the debates. At least the perception was that other candidates, have gotten more of a bounce from those first debates.
Jason McDaniel is an associate professor of political science at San Francisco State. He says Kamala Harris's fundraising numbers will probably be good, but not as good as Pete Buttigieg's, because her star-making debate performance was just a few days ago.
She has moved up in the polls more than any other candidate, right? And so I'm sure that's helped her fundraising since then, but that's only been a couple of weeks, right? If that. So I wouldn't be surprised if her numbers are not a headline number. I think if they were, we probably would have heard about them by now.
He says Eric Swalwell is probably more focused on his declining polling numbers than raising money.
I've seen some new numbers that he might drop out of the next debate. It's very possible that his poll numbers matter more right now to his campaign than his fundraising, but I think both are important.
Now, right now, we are relying on the candidates and campaigns to tell us what they raised, and some have not yet released their numbers. That can certainly mean bad news. But, of course, all of this data will be made public by July 15th, so very soon we're going to know the good, the bad, and the ugly.
And so with the ugly, is that when we start seeing some of the candidates kind of drop out?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have the money, what are you going to do?
This is a question I get more than any other. When will people stop?
Thin the herd? Yeah.
So good news, if that's what you're looking for. Professor McDaniel said that people who don't make the debate stage in the end of July, and there's about 6, including Eric Swalwell, who, as we said, is not looking that great for that debate, and in September are probably going to have to pack it in. So we will actually probably in the next 2 months or so see some, maybe not enough for some people, but certainly some of these candidates tying things up and packing it in and going home.
And a lot of campaign cash came in for Kamala right after the debate.
It certainly did. She reported $2 million in the 24 hours after that debate. And that's, of course, a ton of money. But the real question is, what was she raising before that? And so that's going to really determine the whole amount. So I'm sure it's sort of, the graph goes like this. But there's a big spike. But the real question is what was happening in the couple of months before that. She'll have staying power. She'll have enough to be fine. She might not blow the roof off, but she'll have enough to stay in the campaign and, ride it out until the end.
She's definitely doing better in the polls.
Thanks.
That's true.
Thank you, Melissa. Well, it turns out the Trump administration is not giving up on adding a citizenship question on the 2020 census. That's despite a U.S. Supreme Court ruling that sent the case back to a lower court. Government lawyers are telling a court in Maryland they're looking for a way to add a question that will comply with the Supreme Court ruling. Trump tweeted the question was, quote, absolutely moving forward. Meanwhile, the Census Bureau has already begun printing the questionnaires without it. And this just into the newsroom. A federal appeals court has dealt a blow to the president's plans to build a border wall. The Ninth Circuit has upheld a freeze on using Pentagon money to build sections of the wall in Arizona and in New Mexico.